Hook 015s. Somewhere right now, someone making $200,000 a year is staring at their bank account, wondering where it all went. Not because they're irresponsible, not because they don't know what they're doing, because the trap was built before they ever got there. Tension 15 to 60s. Here's the thing, nobody says out loud at that salary level. It doesn't feel like $200,000. It feels like survival with better furniture. You got the raise, you got the title. You moved into the neighborhood you spent years pointing at from the highway. And somewhere between the mortgage and the car payment and the private school application and the spontaneous weekend trip you booked because you finally deserved it, the money just disappeared. And the worst part? You can't even complain about it. Because you know how it sounds. You know what people will say. So you stay quiet. And you keep earning. And you keep feeling like you're just a little bit short of okay. This is the salary trap. And it's more sophisticated than you think. Body. Let's go back to the beginning. Before the salary. Before the lifestyle. There's a concept in behavioral economics called the hedonic treadmill. The idea is simple but brutal. Human beings adapt almost immediately to new circumstances, good or bad. A raise feels incredible for about 3 months. Then it becomes the floor, the new baseline, the thing you can no longer imagine living without. Psychologists Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell identified this in the 1970s when they studied lottery winners. Within a year, lottery winners reported roughly the same levels of happiness as people who hadn't won anything. The euphoria collapsed. Life normalized. Now apply that to income. Every time you earn more, the ceiling becomes the floor, and the trap tightens. But here's where it gets more interesting. Because the hedonic treadmill is just the engine. The fuel is social comparison. When you earn $40,000 a year, your reference group is people making $40,000 a year. Your desires calibrate to that world. Your vacations look a certain way. Your car looks a certain way. Your apartment looks a certain way. And it mostly feels fine. Then you get promoted. You start working with people who make $120,000. You go to the same meetings. You eat at the same lunches. You see their cars in the parking lot, their apartments, their stories about weekend trips to Portugal. And something shifts. Not consciously, not dramatically, just quietly, in the background. Your sense of normal expands. Psychologists call this reference group shift, and it's invisible. You don't notice it happening. You just notice one day that the life you used to dream about no longer feels like enough, so you earn more. And your reference group shifts again, and the cycle repeats. Now here's the question I want you to sit with for a second. At what point does the earnings stop feeling like progress? Because that's the real trap. Not that high earners are bad with money. It's that the system they're inside of is designed to ensure the finish line keeps moving. Let's talk about lifestyle inflation, because this is where theory becomes daily life. Lifestyle inflation is the pattern where your spending rises proportionally or faster than your income. It's not about extravagance. Most people experiencing it don't feel extravagant. They feel reasonable. Of course, we upgraded the apartment. The old one was cramped for 2 people. Of course, we send the kids to a better school. We can afford to. Of course, I got a nicer car. I'm driving 40 minutes each way every day. These aren't irrational choices. They're completely rational, one by one. But collectively, they construct a life that costs exactly as much as you earn. Sometimes more. A 2025 survey found that nearly 60% of Americans earning over $100,000 a year describe themselves as living paycheck to paycheck. Not because they're spending recklessly, because every income level has its own version of survival. And this is the thing that breaks people when they finally see it clearly. The anxiety doesn't go away with more money. It just gets more expensive. But wait, there's another layer here. one that's more psychological than financial. There's a theory in identity psychology around what's called status maintenance. The idea is that once we achieve a certain level of visible success, we develop a fear response around losing it. Not just financially, socially. We become terrified of appearing to have gone backward, so we keep spending, even when we shouldn't. Because the apartment downgrade or the older car doesn't just feel like a practical change, it feels like a public demotion. This is why people with declining incomes often maintain their spending the longest. The psychological cost of visible reduction feels higher than the financial cost of debt. And in a world where pay transparency is growing, where LinkedIn exists, where every dinner party is a quiet status audit, that fear is more intense than ever. Here's something that barely gets talked about in the salary conversation. The tax curve hits hardest at exactly the income level where people feel like they should finally be okay. You cross into a higher bracket. Your gross looks incredible. Your net looks survivable. And nobody prepared you for that gap. Because we talk about salaries in gross terms, we celebrate gross numbers. We post gross numbers on Reddit, but we live in net. Add in student loan repayments that scale to income, childcare costs that don't cap, and healthcare costs that rise with premium employment because you can't afford it. And the picture gets darker fast. The salary trap isn't one thing. It's a system. A coordinated, self-reinforcing loop of behavioral psychology, social comparison, identity anxiety, and financial structure. And the people inside it are often the last ones to see it clearly, because they're too busy earning their way out of it. Climax. Here's the central insight, the one that reframes everything. We've been taught to treat income as the solution. More money equals more security equals more freedom. That's the story. That's the deal we made. But income is not the same as wealth, and it is not the same as freedom. Income is a flow. Wealth is a position. You can have a massive flow that leaves no position behind. You can earn $500,000 over a decade and end up with almost nothing to show for it, if the lifestyle scaled at the same rate. The people who actually feel financially free at high incomes are almost always the ones who kept their reference group anchored, who didn't let the social environment of their new income level define their spending, who made a decision, consciously, to let the gap between what they earn and what they spend become the thing they protect, not as deprivation, not as minimalism, as strategy. The gap is the point, not the number. Ending. We've built a culture that celebrates the number, the salary milestone, the promotion announcement, the job title on the LinkedIn update, and we've built almost no language for what happens after, the quiet disorientation of earning well and still feeling behind, the strange shame of a high income that doesn't feel like enough. If that's where you are, I want you to know, you're not bad with money. You're not irresponsible. You're not failing. You're just inside a trap that was designed to move with you. The first step out of it isn't earning more. It's seeing the trap clearly. Because a trap you can see is one you can actually leave.